Welcome to Ground Control. Alright, today is the day that we get to perform the remaiden on this now brushless mini P-47. I got my battery and my ESC shoved as far forward as I could possibly get it. I pulled a lot of foam out of the interior of the fuselage to be able to do that. And I'll be darned if I still didn't have to add 2.4 grams of nose weight to get the CG where it was when I was flying it stock, because it seemed to fly really well with a neutral balance on that CG. So that's where I have it now. I guess I should have used a little bigger motor maybe. I would rather that not be 2.4 grams of dead weight. But this 1306 motor, it only weighs 11 grams. So I thought by the time that I got everything installed in it and had this brushless motor all the way out here on the nose, there wouldn't be any need for any nose ballast weight, but I was wrong. So this is a 1306, so maybe a 1506. If I got 2.4 grams of nose weight on it. It's right out on the weight I added is right out on the nose. So you need something about 13.5 grams. A motor that weighs about 13.5 grams, so that you won't need any ballast weight on the nose. It's a pretty lightweight 1306 motor. You might find a different 1306 motor that provides as much thrust and efficiency as this motor that weighs a little bit more to get that balance right. I did make the modification to the linkage on the elevator. I was kind of worried about that, not being able to launch it, or test it in the gyro modes, because what I want to do is, just in case, I want to launch it in stabilization mode and then climb up to about 30 or 40 feet and then put it into manual mode and see what it does, because I don't know. Like I said, I was just kind of guessing on the motor angle, so that's got to be tested out, and having it at 30 or 40 feet before I flip it into full manual mode, if something is terribly wrong, it will give me time to catch it, so I don't crash it. But what I did was I just clipped off the stock control horn that was on top of the elevator, because I didn't want to have to use acetone to get that out and relocate it and take a chance on messing up the foam or messing up the paint. So I just installed a different micro control horn on the bottom of it after I clipped the stock one off. I just punched a new hole in the side of the fuselage. It's in the same location vertically as the original one, and just grouped it out a little bit so that there wouldn't be any binding on the control rod. But that also allowed me, because I used a different control horn that has an innermost hole that's a little bit closer to the horizontal stabilizer than the stock one was. So not only now is the gyro going to be correcting the elevator in the proper direction now, but it also gives me more movement on the elevator at the same time. I was kind of hesitant to do anything about the ailerons yet, because one of the things that I didn't like about this plane was the really slow roll rate. So I haven't done anything with the ailerons yet as far as linkage. I do have maximum throw on it, both mechanically and in the transmitter. But it is going to be moving a lot faster through the air now than it was stock. So I wanted to see how that translates as far as roll rate with more speed through the air before I make any adjustments to it. If I had to guess, I'd guess that I'm probably going to have to end up extending the control surface for the ailerons and then gluing those two sections together. But before I do that and take a chance on messing up the look of the plane, I want to test it without doing that first. So anyway, it's a little bit heavier than I planned on. It's 115 grams even all up weight with a 2S 300 milliamp hour 35C LiPo, which is what I'm going to be flying it with. I'd like to be able to get a minimum of 5 minutes of flight time out of it, and we'll see how that goes. I'm going to have my timer set for 4 minutes to begin with, so that I can check the voltages that are left in the cells after 4 minutes of flight, and then hopefully I'll be able to bump it up to a full 5-minute flight. But still looks pretty good, even with my modification on the linkage, and everything's a go as far as I can tell. So I will meet you out in the field, and we'll perform the remating on this now brushless Mini P-47. I'll see you out there.
Okay, it's time for the maiden launch of the Eachine Mini P-47. Now that it's brushless, I have it in, I almost didn't have it in gyro mode. Alright, I've got it in gyro mode. So we're going to launch it in gyro mode, and then test it out in gyro mode, and then we'll gain some altitude and flip it into manual mode and see what we have. I don't know what launch throttle to use, so when in doubt, I always go with 60%. That usually works out. Okay, launching. Right across the sun. Of course. Alright, I'm using a lot of rudder there. It's flying sweet in gyro mode. Not a lot of elevator. Man, is that quiet now, huh? And that looks sweet. Putting in quite a bit of rudder there. Okay, so I have my timer set for 4 minutes because you never know how efficient these systems are going to be until you test them. Alright, so let's cut back on the throttle a little bit. Gain some altitude. Spins around nicely in gyro mode. Alright, I'm going to gain some altitude here, and then we'll flip it into manual mode and see what we have. Okay, I am in full manual mode now. Holy cow, I got some elevator there, don't I? Look at that, guys. Did you see that? Ooh, it's got some power now. First time flying this brushless full manual mode. Big wide loop. That is awesome. Alright, let's see what we have as far as aileron. Yeah, well, it's better going when when it's going through the air faster like that. It's a lot faster roll, but it's still pretty lethargic. I need a little more expo on my ailerons. They're a little twitchy. Elevator feels pretty good. Okay, so let's come through here. Let's see what kind of vertical we have before I use up too much of these old batteries. Okay, so let's get through here. That wasn't too bad. A lot more power than it had stock. Did you see that? Whee! Oh man, that is so awesome. Whoa, watch the truck. Watch the truck, Tony. Okay, timer's elapsed. I have no idea how long these little batteries are going to last. Okay, so I put it back into full gyro mode. Let's bring it back through here and land it. I'm going to make one more circuit here. Looks like we are clear. I'm surprised that it handled so well in manual mode. It felt like the amount of down angle and right angle that I have in the motor. Let me get it over the lane here. There we go. It felt like the amount of right angle and down angle that I had on it felt pretty good. I need a little more. Let me see here. I need a little more down trim in the elevator. Let me put it in manual mode so I can see here. It stayed pretty nice and straight when I put it in manual mode, but it wanted to nose up a little bit. So how about that, guys? Let's go over here and see how much juice we've got left in the cells. Now these little 2S 300 milliamp hour LiPos that I have had these for years, and I can charge them up right before I come out here, and by the time I get out here, the cells are down to 4.1 volts. So they don't hold their charge very well. So when I was launching this, the battery was already down to 4.1 volts per cell, not 4.2 volts per cell. Okay, so let's pull this out and see. I'll try and hold it up here so you can see it. The sun low in the sky. Okay, 7.468 for the pack. I hope you guys can see that. 3.72, 3.75. So 3.72, 3.75. At least the cells are staying pretty well balanced, even though they're very, very old. Okay, so I am pretty ecstatic about putting this in the air the first time.
Okay, so what did you guys think of this little plane now that has been converted to brushless? I was extremely happy. It performed better than I had hoped. Flying it in gyro mode, because these V761 boards, the gyros are so good in those. And you'll see a better demonstration of that. Now I wanted to go out there, I wanted to perform the maiden, I wanted to see how it performed. I wanted to try and see what kind of changes I needed to make. I did put 3 additional test flights on it out there. I only have 4 of those little 2S 300 milliamp hour LiPos, so I'm gonna have to pull the trigger on some more of those little LiPos, because those are so darn old and won't hold their charge anymore. But even with that, did you see how much power it had? Did you see the big wide loops that I was doing with it? I was pretty darn happy, and not only with the power, but the amount of the efficiency. Now, like I stated in the video, those batteries are down to almost 4.1 volts per cell by the time I get out there, by the time I put them into the plane. Well, you're talking about, with the efficiency of the power system here, you're talking about almost a minute of flight time that's gone before I even connect it to the plane. Which also means that right off the bat, the motor is spinning slower than it would with a LiPo that was holding on to a full 4.2 volts per cell. So I am very happy with the performance I got out of it with those tired old LiPos. I was especially happy with the way it handled when I switched into manual mode. It seemed to keep the wings nice and level, which tells me that the right angle on the motor is probably good. I may increase that just a tick. But I had to put in a tremendous amount of down angle on the elevator to keep it from nosing up on me. The one thing that it did when I switched into full manual mode is it nosed up on me, which tells me I need to put more down angle in the motor. So I changed my mind on that after I put 3 additional test flights on it. and I'll be publishing a couple of those test flights soon, so you can better see the performance of the plane. But definitely, it's got a positive angle of attack on the main wing, and so I would rather counter that with some additional down angle on the motor rather than a ton of down trim in the elevator to keep the nose pulled down, and then it will handle a lot better as well. Having the thrust from the motor pull the nose down rather than having the tail push up with down trim in the elevator. And I'd forgotten something, and I want to remind you guys of this, but with every one of those little receiver gyro bricks that I've ever used, if you put in too much trim in the transmitter, it will initialize. Everything will work except it won't arm the motor. So I had put in an additional amount of down trim in the elevator from the first flight, and then I went to launch it and the motor wouldn't spin, and I thought, oh man, what is going on now? And then it dawned on me. So I took a bunch of trim back out of it that I had in the elevator, hit the throttle, and it spun right up. So for whatever reason, if you put in a lot of radio trim with these little gyro bricks, they'll initialize okay, but they will not spin the motor. Yeah, so I had forgotten. It's been so long since I had seen that, I almost forgot about it. I almost started troubleshooting my power system in the plane until it dawned on me, well, you just put in I thought, what did I do between this flight and the last flight? And the answer was I put in a bunch more down trim on the elevator. So I took that trim back out and the motor spun fine, and then I put the trim back in it and the motor still was spinning fine. So it's just that initial activation of the motor for whatever reason. Some weird thing in the firmware on those boards. But anyway, after I put some additional down trim in it and then put it into manual mode, it pretty well kept the nose pushed down. But the other thing that I was worried about was the 14.5 grams of additional weight I had on it from stock. But it had no problem. It still felt extremely light, like it had very light wing loading. And you saw it when I was bringing it in for landing, and I had between a 3 to 4 mile an hour wind out there when I was flying it. And when I was bringing it in, it just floated in, even being 14.5 grams heavier than it was stock, it still just floated right in. I mean, you didn't even need any space to land it at all. So I'm also very happy about that. It is now a very aerobatic, very quiet, brushless P-47. So I've got to figure out, I got to put some more test flights on it and figure out all the changes that I need to make to it before I take it back out. I've got another project, as I think I stated in the video, that I've got to get on. So this one is going to have to be low priority for the moment, but I will end up extending the ailerons. The ailerons are going to need to be extended, and I've got so much authority on the elevator, I think I'm actually going to move the linkage from the top hole to the center hole on that control horn, because when I pulled back on that to do a loop the first time, did you see how tight the loop was? Yeah, so I've got a little too much authority on the elevator, so I need to tone that down a little bit. I did apply more expo to the elevator. I did apply more expo to the ailerons. The ailerons are not as twitchy as they were. But once I get the ailerons extended, I may actually have to tone the ailerons down a little bit too on the linkage to keep it from being so twitchy. But better than I'd hoped. Stay tuned. I'll be publishing the additional 2 of the 3 test flights that I performed this morning. Awesome little plane. Also, this is not only a test of this brushless conversion, but this is a test of the brush to brushless module. So first time I've used the module. This is the very first test flights I've ever performed with that module, and it performed flawlessly. So I want to thank J. Bauer Electronics again for sending that module for testing and review. I am definitely going to be using that module in future brushless conversions. I'm going to if I have time, there's one more brushless conversion that I would like to perform this year. And if I have time to get to it, I'll be using another one of those brush to brushless modules, so I can use with the all-in-one receiver brick, because it saves so much space, and there's fewer things that you have to fiddle with. It just makes the brushless conversion a lot easier than replacing everything electronic-wise in it. Okay, so once I get it flying, get it tested more, get it adjusted, get it flying exactly the way I want it, I'll sit down and I will let you know what would I have done differently if I had to do it again. I always do that with all my projects. I reflect on what I did to complete the project, and if I had to do it over again, what would I change? And so I think that's really good information for anyone who's interested in doing this project. Learn from my mistakes so that when you do yours, it'll be flawless. All right, well, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the air.